Okay, let's start. Do you have any question?
Um, I think so.
All right, so let's do section 9.2. 9.2. So quadratic equation by completing squares. By the completing squares. So last time we were doing by using the square root property. So today we are going to use the completing squares method. Completing squares method. So how do we solve this one by completing squares? If you recall, if you have a square plus 2a, if you call this one a plus b square, a plus b square is what? If you expand this one, then what do you get? Get a square plus 2ab plus what? Plus b square, right? Then if you have a minus b square, then this is a square minus 2ab plus what? B square. If you recall those. So these are the binomials. So this is a factor of what you're getting. So a plus b square, a minus b square. Now, when you expand this one, you get this. So a square plus 2ab plus b square. So when you square a minus b square is this one. Now, if you're given a question and then you're told to write in this form, you're given this, a square plus 2ab plus b square, then you're told to write in the form a plus b square. So this one is a binomial. So how should we write this? By using completing squares. So how should we write that? By using completing squares. So we have four steps of doing this. So step number one is, so if you have a square plus 2ab plus maybe b square, so we can use this. So if you have this one, yeah, let's say we have this. Or we can, yeah, let's say we have this one. Okay, so what is the first step? So number one is identify. If we have, let's say, instead of a, we write x. So let's just write x plus a square. So x plus a square is equals to what? Or x plus b square. So x plus b square, so this is the same as x squared plus 2ax plus what? 2bx plus b square, right? This one. Okay? So x plus b is x squared plus 2bx plus b squared. So what are the steps now of writing this x squared plus 2 in this one into x plus b? So how should we write this one into this? So the first step is identify b. So identify b. So identify b, okay? And this b is from the coefficient of x. the coefficient of x, and the coefficient of x is this. So the coefficient of x. So identify b from the coefficient of x. So this one. So you look for the value which is the coefficient of that x there. Okay? Number 2, find half of the coefficient of x. Half the coefficient of x, and then you square. Find half the coefficient of that x, which is b, and then you square. And this one is the number to complete the square. So this is the number which is used to complete this square. Okay? So the coefficient of x, and then you find the number which is half that coefficient of x. Half the coefficient of x. And number 3, add the 1/2b squared to the x squared plus bx. Add the coefficient of the 1/2 square to now x squared plus b. So add this one to x squared plus b. So after getting, so you, first of all, you identify b, which is the coefficient of x. Number 2, half that coefficient, 1/2, and then you square. Number 3, you add to this one now, x squared plus bx. Add this. And then finally, number 4, factor the perfect square trinomial. Factor the perfect square trinomial. Writing it as a binomial square. So factor the perfect square trinomial. So trinomial is what you got by adding x squared plus bx. So there are 3 values there. So it's called trinomial. And then by is now 2 values into 2 of them. So it becomes binomial. And then you square. Then you square. Okay. Let's do an example. We see how we apply these methods to solve by using the completing squares. Okay, example number 1. Complete the squares to make a perfect square trinomial, then write the results as binomial square. So, example, m squared minus 13m. M squared minus 13m. Complete the squares. Complete the squares by writing to make a perfect square trinomial. So look for the other value here. So after getting it, now write in terms of binomial squared. So you now bring the binomial squared. So how should we solve this? So the first step is identify the coefficient of x. And in our case, identify the coefficient of what? M. And our coefficient of m is what? So number 1, identify coefficient of m. So our coefficient of m is negative what? 13. So negative 13. And then what do you do? you have the coefficient of that m. So basically, if you look at this, to write this one into trinomial, then it will be what? Of which form? It will be of this form, right? Let's say x squared minus 2 ab ax plus what? Plus b squared, okay? So it will be of this form. And of this form is what? X minus b squared, right? So it is of that form because we have a minus here. So we are trying to look for this value. So let's, okay, so the first step is identify the coefficient of m and then half that coefficient. So take half of that. Half the coefficient of m. Then number 2 is find, so now find 1 over 2 b squared. So number 2 is, you do what? You square. You square. Then number 3, now come and do what? Add. Add to this. So m squared minus 13m plus minus 13 all over 2. You do what? Square. So you come and add. So you add this one. Then number 3, factor the perfect square trinomial, writing it as a binomial square. So factor, so this is now the trinomial. So because we have 1, 2, 3. Now let's try to binomial, which are what? 2 of them. Now factor. So how will we factor this? So because looking at this, okay, so look at this one. Look at this. So if you look at this one, then what do? You take x, okay, and the what? And this, so that means you take x from here, and then you take the b from here. By doing what to b? Finding the square root, which you take b only, right? So in our case, then this we take this one, which is m, because there is a minus here. Then that means it will be of this form, right?
Correct.
So now it will be minus what? 13 over what? 2. So that is now the binomial square. So that is the binomial square.
That's the answer.
Yeah, so that is like that. So this is just an expression. When it comes to the equation now, is when you put the equal sign here. And then now using the square root property, which we did last time, then you can be able to get what?
Yes.
The values of m. So we will see. So that one is another section. Okay, so another example. So another example. Here you're given q squared minus q all over 4. Complete the squares to make a perfect square trinomial. Then write the results as a binomial squared. Write the results as a binomial squared. So again, this is similar to this. Okay. So we identify the coefficient of x, and what is the coefficient of? So here in our case is the coefficient of q, right? So which is what? Minus what?
1 over
1 over 4. Then what do? You halve, right? So you multiply by half. So you have this. So what is the half of this one?
1/8.
1 over 8. And then what do you do? Square. And then what do you do? Come and do what?
Put it back in.
Add. So you come and add here. So minus 1 over 8, and then square. Then, which form is this? It's in which form? The one for what? X minus what? B, right? So finally it will be Q minus what? 1 over 8 square. Q minus 1 over 8. That's easy, right? Yeah, I know. Wait for the exam. Okay, so another one here is a similar one. So W square minus 3 over 2W. So write that on trinomial form, and then you write again into binomial squared. So what is our coefficient of W here? Minus what?
3
2. You multiply by what?
1/2.
1/2. You get what? Minus 3 over what? 4. Then you do what? Square. Then you do what? Come add it here. Minus 3 over 4. Then square. Then you write into binomial squared form, which is W minus what? 3 over 4 square. Minus 3 over 4 square. Okay, now let's say you're given a binomial equation. A quadratic equation. So if you're given now a quadratic equation, so how should we solve the quadratic equation? By now using the completing squares method. So for example, you are given C minus 26, and then C plus 6 equals to minus 192. So solve this one by completing squares. Solve this by completing squares. So in this case, we cannot say C minus 26 equals to what? 192. Or C plus 6 equals to what? 192. Minus 192. We cannot. I know some of you can do something like that, of which we don't do something. So what you do what? You expand this.
Yeah.
So when you expand this one, what do you get? C square plus C6 minus 26C, and then minus 26 times 6. So what do you get? So C square, right? And then plus 6C minus 26C minus 6 times 26 is what? So 6, is it 136?
156.
156 equals to what? Minus 192. So C square plus, no, so it will be what? Minus what? Minus 20C, right? Minus 156 equals to minus 192. So C square minus 20C equals to minus 192 plus 156. What do you get? So C square minus 20C equals to what? 192 minus 156. Minus 36. Okay. Now we have this side, and then we have our constant in the other side. So we want to write this in a perfect square mode. Okay? So after writing this one in a perfect square, which is a binomial squared, then we now use the square root property because we are getting something like this. Okay? So if you get something like this equals to minus what? 36, right? So if you get something like this equals to minus 36, you remember us using the square root property to get the values of w here. So equals to, let's say, minus 36. So what do you do here? We find the what? The square root, right?
Yeah.
So multiply by half. What you do this side, you do it in the other side, multiply by half. So in the other side, because it is the square root, then it will be plus or minus, right? The square root of that value. That's what we did last time. Okay, so let's write this one in this form. So this c square minus 20c is like what? So this is like x square minus 2ab plus what? B square, right? And this one is like what? X minus
B
b
squared.
square. So x minus b square. Okay, let's go. Right. So here, so it is, let's say, c square minus 20c equals minus 36. Okay, so identify the coefficient of c here in our case. So what is our coefficient here? Negative 20 over, so negative 20. So negative 20. And then what do you do?
10 by half.
You divide by half. And then what do you do? Square.
Square.
Okay? And then what do you do? Come and do what?
Yeah.
Add. So c square minus 20c. Now my plus. So this is what? C minus 10, right?
Square.
Square.
Yeah.
Equals to what? Minus what? 36. Equals to minus 36. Now, write this one in the binomial square. So what is our, so it will be what? C minus 10 squared equals to what? Minus 36. Equals to minus 36. So again, what you do here, okay? Sorry about the next step. So what you do here, you do it again in the other side. Because if you put this one here, then it will not be equals to minus 36. So what you had here, you add it in the other side so that it can cancel.
Right.
Okay? So c square minus 20c plus half of that coefficient. So what you do in this side, you now do it again in the other side, plus half of that coefficient, minus 10 z square. Because when you now come and remove this value, then you just come and remain with this one.
Right.
Because this one is addition. So when you add here and then you add here, so if you want to remove it, you can still remove it. Because you can subtract again, go and subtract. Okay? So plus minus 10 squared. So we now have c minus 10 squared equals to minus 36 plus minus 10 squared. Okay? So minus 10 squared equals to, so minus 36 plus what? So minus 10 squared is what? 100, right? Right?
Yes.
So c minus 10 squared equals to 100 minus 36 is what? 64? 64. Now, using the square root property. So when you use the square root property here, what do you get? So you get the square root of this, and then you get the square root of the other side. So it will be c minus 10 equals to plus or minus the square root of what? 64. Plus or minus the square root of 64. So c minus 10 equals to plus or minus 8, right? So we take the 10 to the other side. So c equals to, because this one is minus, so it will be 10 plus or minus 8. So what is our value of c? So c equals to 18 or what? Or 2. Because this is 10 minus 8, which is 2. Is that clear?
Yes.
Why, if 64 is a positive number, and we're just taking the square root of it, why are we using a plus or minus?
So what did we say about the square root property?
It's got to be plus or minus.
So we say if you're getting the square root of, let's say we have let's say we have 64, right? So to get the square root of this, then it is 8, right? So this 8, if you want to square this one, then it is 64, right? If you square. Again, if you square negative 8, what do you get?
64.
You still get what? 64. We say something like that, right? Yeah, so that means to get a square, if you're getting the square root, if the value of n is even, then definitely to get the square root, it will be plus or minus. It will be plus or minus. If it is just odd, then it will just be plus. Or it will just, if it is odd and there is a minus inside here, then it will just be a minus. Hey, so I can do another example. We see how this one goes. So let's do another example. So if you have the one which has been solved for you equals to 25. Solve this one using completing squares. So that one is a squared minus 6a equals to 25. So by using the completing squares. Okay. So they have already put the constant to the other side. So now let's write this one in trinomial form. A squared minus 6a. So again, this one is similar to what? X squared minus, let's say 2ab, 2ax, plus what? B squared, right? Which is of the form
X minus
x minus
B
b
squared.
squared. So it is of that form. Okay. Let's come down here. So what is the coefficient of A?
-6.
-6. You do what?
Half of
You do what?
square.
Square. And then you come and do what?
Half.
So what do you get here?
A squared minus 6a plus.
Square, right? Right? So it is -3 squared. So we come and add. So a squared minus 6a now plus -3 squared equals to 25. So what we have done in this side, then we do what? Do it in the other side. So plus -3 squared. Plus -3 squared. And then, okay, so we write this side now to the binomial squared. So it will now be a minus 3 squared. Now equals to solve the other side. So 25 minus 3 squared is plus what? Plus 9. So a minus 3 squared equals to 25 plus 9 is what? 44. 44.
Isn't it 34?
34, sorry.
Yeah.
34. Then now using the square root property. Using the square root property. So a minus 3 equals to plus or minus the square root of what? 34. A minus 3 equals to plus or minus the square root of 34. So what is our a? So our a is now equals to, we take 3 to the other side, so 3 plus or minus the square root of 34. So in Newton, it doesn't have this. So what do? You write 3 plus this, comma, 3 minus. All right, so we can do another example. Okay, so q square plus 20q equals to minus 104 using the completing squares. Solve that using completing squares. So this is our positive. So if that is positive, then our binomial square would be, let's say, x plus what? B squared. X plus b squared. Okay. Step number 1, identify the coefficient of q, which is what? In our case is 20.
Divided by 2.
Do what? Divide by 2. Do what?
Square.
What do you get here?
10 squared.
Do what? Go and add in both
Both
sides.
sides.
So q squared plus 20q plus 10 squared equals to minus 1/4 plus 10 squared. So write this one in binomial square form. So it will be q plus what?
10.
10 squared equals to, now solve the other side. 1 minus 1/4 plus what? 1. So q plus 10 squared equals to minus
4.
minus 4. Equals to minus 4. Now, using the square root property, so we find the square root of this side and the other. So what do we get?
Q plus 10 equals plus or minus
So
square root of 4.
q plus 10 equals to plus or minus the square root of minus 4. Plus or minus the square root of minus 4. So q plus 10 equals, so we take the, so take 10 to the other side. So q equals to what?
Negative 10.
Negative 10 plus or minus the square root of minus 4. Okay, so if you recall this, the square root of minus 4 is the same as the square root of minus 1, the square root of 4.
4. Yeah.
And the square root of minus 1 is
I.
and the square root of 4 is
2.
So it forms 2i. So our q here will be equals to minus 10 plus or minus 2. plus or minus 2. Now you've gotten that. So Newton would say, take this and then take the minus.
But you're good with it like that, correct? Like for-
Yeah, in your exam, you can just write it like this. I will grade it like that. All right. Okay, let's come to the other one, another example. 2c squared minus 4c equals minus 400. So 2c squared minus 4c equals minus 400. Now, if you look at this one, now, if you see this one, then definitely what comes to your mind, if you want to use the completing squares, if we recall, the coefficient of this one was what? 1, right?
Mhm.
So the coefficient is 1. So before you use the completing squares, you make sure the coefficient of c squared is what?
1.
1. So you make sure the coefficient of c squared is 1. So you can write that on somewhere. Make sure the coefficient of x squared or c squared or the coefficient of the highest order there, you divide by that value. So it should be 1. So we make sure the coefficient of c squared is 1. So you divide by 2 everywhere. Okay. So we get c squared minus 2c equals to minus 200 equals to minus 200. Then now, using the steps that we use, so we can say the first step is make sure the coefficient of c squared is 1. So that one is very, very important. Very important. Okay. Now, step number 2, identify the coefficient of c, which is minus 2, divide by what? 2, do what? Square. So our coefficient of c is minus 2, divide by 2, square. This is equals to minus 1
Square.
Then you do what? Go and add. So c squared minus 2c plus minus 1 squared equals to minus 200 plus minus 1 squared. Minus 1 squared. So now write this one in binomial form. So it will be c minus 1
1 square.
squared equals to minus 200 plus what? Plus 1. So c minus 1 squared equals to minus what? 199. Minus 199. Now, using the square root property, so c minus 1 equals to plus or minus the square root of minus 199, which is similar to plus or minus the square root of I of minus 1. The square root of 119 and c minus 1 equals to plus or minus I, the square root of what? 190. So we now take the 1 to the other side. So c equals to 1 plus or minus I, the square root of 199. C minus 1 equals to 1 plus or minus I square root of 190. Okay, any question after that?
So is Newton gonna allow us to put it in like that?
No, it will not allow you to put it like this. So what you do, you put 1 plus I, the square root of 199, comma, 1 minus I, the square root of 199. Okay?
Awesome, thank you.
All right. Okay, so in the next 8 minutes, we can do the last one here. So 4q squared minus 2q equals to minus 65. So the first step, make sure the coefficient of q squared is 1. The coefficient of q squared is 1. So you divide by 4, divide by 4, divide by 4. So you get q squared minus 1 over 2q equals minus 65 all over 1. Identify the coefficient of q, which is minus 1, 1 over 2. Do what? Divide by, multiply by half. So, and this one is equals to minus 1 over 4. And then you do what? Square.
Square.
Square. Square. Then you come and do what? I in both sides. So q squared minus 1 over 2q plus minus 1 over 4 squared equals to minus 65 all over 4 plus minus 1 over 4 squared. So writing this one in binomial square form, so it will be q minus 1 over 4, then square equals to minus 65 all over 4 plus what? 1 over what? 60 plus 1 over 60. Because when you square 1 over 4 by 1 over 4, 1 over 4 by 1 over 4, you get what? 1 over 60. 1 over 60. So what is this one? So our LCM is 16. So this and this is 4 by 65. So 4 multiplied by 65 is what? 65 times 4, 0, 2, 14, 26, minus 260. And then plus what?
1.
Plus 1.
Negative 259.
So this one is minus 259 over
16.
60. So q minus 1 over 4 square equals to minus 259 all over 60. Now, using the square root property, then q minus 1 over 4 equals to plus or minus, it will now be I. Do you have the square root of 259? So let's say square root of 259. Divide by what is the square root of 16?
4.
So now we take 1 over 4 to the other side. So q equals to 1 over 4 plus or minus I, the square root of 259 all over 1. All over 4. And that is Okay, so that's how we write it. So you need to follow the steps. First of all, make sure the coefficient of q square is 1. Secondly, get half the coefficient of q. Thirdly, come and square it. Add it. What you do in one side, do it in the other side. And then later on, you come and use the square root property. You get the values there. Now. So those are the 2 steps of solving the quadratic equation. So we've used the square root property and now the completing squares property.
Do you get the same answer?
You will get the same answer.
The same answer?
The methods are different, but the answers are the same. Because basically when we reach here, we use the what?
Differences.
The square root property.
Yeah.
Here we were using the completing squares. So you use the completing squares, you come to the next one, you use the square root property. So the next step is by using the formula. So we'll come and formulate the quadratic formula.
I hate that part.
It's so easy. So to formulate the formula itself, we use how many minutes? 3 minutes remaining. So to use quadratic formula is so easy. So to formulate the quadratic formula, you use this one. So let's say we have a square plus 2ab plus c square equals to 0. Okay? So we use the completing squares.
Okay.
No, sorry. What am I writing? Yeah. Let's say x squared plus 2b squared plus b squared. Sorry, plus 2b plus b squared equals to 0. Okay? Okay? So what is the coefficient? So we, first of all, we take this one to the other side. So x squared plus 2bx equals to minus
B squared.
b squared.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And then, we can say this one is c squared. C squared, okay?
Okay.
C squared. Then half the coefficient of x is what?
2
2b all over 2, and then we do what?
squared.
B squared. So it will be b, then b squared, right?
Okay.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And then we come and do what? Add it here.
Add it.
So x squared plus 2bx plus b squared equals to minus c squared. What do you do again here?
Plus B squared.
Plus b squared.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then we're now using the we now write in this form x now plus what? B squared equals to what?
Mm-hmm.
Equals to minus. So we can swap. So it
Okay.
will be b squared plus minus what?
C squared.
Minus c squared.
I see.
Then we do what?
The square root.
Yeah, we find the square. So x plus b equals to the square root of this. Anyway,
Is it plus or minus the square
yes,
root?
plus or minus. We'll still come
Okay.
to that. So there's a way of solving. All right. So see you guys on Wednesday.
And now, we have another test before the final, right?
Yeah, there is one test.